Welcome, everyone. Let me start with a simple question. Have you ever noticed this? You understand English. You know the words. You know the grammar. But when it's time to speak, your mind freezes. You translate. You hesitate. You lose confidence. And suddenly, the sentence that sounded perfect in your head falls apart when it reaches your mouth. Most English learners believe fluency comes from more vocabulary, more grammar rules, or more practice speaking. Those things matter. Yes. But they are not the real breakthrough. Real fluency begins much earlier, much quieter, inside your mind, the moment you stop using English as a translated language and start thinking in English. Not perfectly, not all the time, but naturally. Today, we are going to explore why thinking in English changes everything, and how this mental shift removes hesitation, builds confidence, and unlocks real, effortless fluency. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear is not a trick. It's a transformation. Part 1. Fluency is a thinking skill, not a speaking skill. Most people misunderstand what fluency really is. They think fluency means speaking fast, or speaking without mistakes, or sounding like a native speaker. But fluency is none of those things. Fluency is speed of thought. It is how quickly your mind can form ideas directly in English, without stopping to translate from your native language. Think about how you speak your first language. You don't translate. You don't plan grammar. You don't search for words. The idea appears, and the words follow. That is fluency. Now compare that to how most learners use English. They think in their native language first, then they translate into English, then they adjust grammar, then they worry about mistakes. By the time they speak, the moment has already passed. This is why many learners feel slow, nervous, mentally exhausted after conversations. Not because their English is bad, but because their brain is doing double work. Fluency is not created in the mouth. It is created in the mind. When you think in English, something powerful happens. Your brain stops treating English as a foreign system and starts treating it as a tool for meaning. You no longer ask, "How do I say this in English?" You simply say it, even if it's not perfect. And here's an important truth most teachers don't tell you. Fluency comes before accuracy, not after. Children don't speak perfectly, but they speak fluently. They communicate first, they refine later. Thinking in English allows adult learners to do the same. When you think in English, you reduce hesitation, respond faster, sound more natural, feel more confident, not because your grammar suddenly improves, but because your mind is no longer fighting itself. And this mental shift is the foundation for everything else we will discuss. Because once your thinking changes, your speaking follows. Part 2. Why translation is the silent enemy of fluency. Most English learners don't realize this. They are not blocked by vocabulary. They are not blocked by grammar. They are blocked by translation. Translation feels safe. It feels logical. It feels necessary. After all, that's how most of us were taught. You see an English sentence. You translate it into your native language. You memorize the meaning. Then you try to reverse the process when you speak. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Translation trains your brain to hesitate. Every time you translate, you add an extra step, and that extra step slows everything down. Let's look at what actually happens inside your mind. You want to say a simple sentence, something like, "I'm not sure yet." In your native language, the idea appears instantly, but then your brain asks, what does this mean exactly? What is the English structure? Is the tense correct? Is this polite enough? By the time you answer those questions, the moment is gone. This is not a language problem. It is a processing problem. Your brain is acting like a translator, not a communicator. Translation forces you to focus on form first instead of meaning first. And language does not work that way. Real communication is fast, imperfect, context-based. Native speakers don't construct sentences, they release meaning. When learners translate, they do the opposite. They construct, then release. If there is time. This is why many learners can read English well, understand movies with subtitles, score high on tests, but still struggle to speak naturally. Because translation builds passive knowledge, not active fluency. It teaches you about English, but not how to use English. There is another hidden danger in translation. It creates fear. When you translate, you constantly compare. Your sentence, your grammar, your word choice, against an imaginary perfect version. And every comparison creates doubt. What if this is wrong? What if they don't understand? What if I sound stupid? So you wait, and waiting kills fluency. Thinking in English removes this fear, because when you think in English, you stop comparing. You don't ask if the sentence is perfect. You ask if the message is clear, and clarity is always more powerful than perfection. Even broken English spoken confidently is more effective than perfect English spoken too late. This is why many fluent speakers make grammar mistakes, use simple words, repeat themselves, yet still sound natural and confident, because their thinking is direct. No translation, no internal debate, no delay, just meaning, words. And here's the key insight of this part. Translation keeps English outside of you. Thinking in English brings it inside. As long as English stays outside, you will always feel like a guest in the language. When English moves into your thinking, it becomes yours. And once it becomes yours, fluency stops being something you chase and starts becoming something you express. Part 3. How thinking in English rewires the brain for speed and confidence. When people hear the phrase thinking in English, they often imagine something difficult, something forced, something unnatural. But in reality, thinking in English is not about effort. It's about rewiring. Your brain is not fixed. It is flexible. It constantly adapts to what you use most. This ability is called neuroplasticity, the brain's power to build faster pathways through repetition. And this is where everything changes. When you translate, your brain builds a long path. Idea, native language, translation, English, speech. This path is slow. It has too many turns, too many checkpoints. Every checkpoint creates hesitation. But when you think in English, a new path forms. Idea, English, speech. Shorter, cleaner, faster. The more you use this direct path, the stronger it becomes. And one day, something surprising happens. You stop trying to think in English. You just do. This is why fluent speakers often say, "I don't know how I learned it. It just started happening." That's not magic. That's the brain choosing the fastest route. Speed is important, but confidence matters even more. Here's the connection most learners miss. Confidence comes from predictability. When your brain knows it can respond quickly, it relaxes. When it relaxes, your voice becomes steadier. Your tone becomes natural. Your body language opens up. But when your brain expects delay, it panics. It hesitates before you even speak. Thinking in English removes uncertainty. You are no longer wondering, how do I translate this? Is this sentence correct? What structure should I use? Instead, your brain asks a simpler question. What do I want to say? And that question is easy to answer. This is why people who think in English speak more calmly, pause naturally, sound more confident, even if their vocabulary is limited. Because confidence is not built on complexity. It is built on control. There is also something deeper happening. When you think in English, you start associating emotion with English. You don't just understand the words. You feel them. You feel hesitation. You feel excitement. You feel humor. You feel disagreement. This emotional connection is powerful because language without emotion is fragile. But language with emotion sticks. That's why learners who only study grammar often forget what they learn. And learners who use English in their thinking remember effortlessly. They are not memorizing, they are experiencing. Once English becomes a thinking language, it stops being a subject. It becomes a part of how you process the world. And when that happens, fluency stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like freedom. Part 4. Why thinking in English reduces fear and self-consciousness. Fear is the real enemy of fluency, not lack of vocabulary, not bad grammar. Fear of making mistakes, fear of being judged, fear of sounding foolish. And here's the strange part. Most learners don't feel this fear when they understand English. They feel it when they produce English. The moment they open their mouth, the fear appears. Why? Because translation creates a spotlight. When you translate, you become hyper-aware of every word. You watch yourself speak. You listen to your own voice. You judge each sentence as it comes out. And the mind cannot speak freely while being watched. Thinking in English removes that spotlight. Because when you think in English, you are not performing. You are simply expressing. You are not asking, is this correct? You are asking, is this what I mean? And that shift changes everything. Fear grows in silence. The longer you wait to speak, the bigger the fear becomes. Thinking in English shortens that waiting time. Less delay means less overthinking, less self-criticism, less anxiety. This is why some learners sound confident. Even with simple, imperfect English, they are not fearless, they are uninterrupted. Another hidden source of fear is identity. When you translate, you feel like two people. One person thinking, one person speaking. And the gap between them creates discomfort. You don't feel fully yourself. But when you think in English, your voice and your thoughts align. You feel whole in the language. That alignment reduces self-consciousness. This is also why many learners say, I feel like a child when I speak English. That feeling comes from translation. You are limiting your expression to what you can safely translate. Thinking in English expands that space, not instantly, but gradually. And here is an important truth. Native speakers make mistakes all the time. They restart sentences. They change words mid-sentence. They speak unclearly, but they don't panic. Why? Because they are thinking in the language. Fluency does not remove mistakes. It removes fear of mistakes. When fear fades, curiosity appears. You start experimenting. You start playing with words. You start speaking more. And the more you speak, the more fluent you become. Not because you are brave, but because you are no longer afraid. Thinking in English doesn't make you perfect. It makes you comfortable. And comfort is the soil where real fluency grows. Part 5. How thinking in English improves listening and real-time understanding. Most learners believe listening and speaking are separate skills. They are not. They are two sides of the same process. If you struggle to understand fast English, the problem is often not your ears. It is your thinking speed. When you listen while translating, your mind falls behind. The speaker keeps moving, but you are stuck translating the last sentence. And once you fall behind, panic begins. Thinking in English changes how you listen. You stop converting sounds into your native language. You start converting sounds into meaning. This is critical, because real conversations don't wait. When you think in English, your brain recognizes patterns faster. Common phrases, sentence rhythm, emotional tone. You are no longer decoding word by word. You are sensing direction. Think about music. You don't analyze each note. You feel the melody. Language works the same way. Thinking in English trains your brain to hear English as a flow, not a puzzle. This is why fluent speakers often say, "I didn't hear every word, but I understood." That level of understanding is impossible through translation. There is another powerful effect. When you think in English, your predictions improve. Your brain starts guessing what comes next. And prediction is the secret of fast listening. For example, when someone says, "I was about to," your brain already expects. Explain. Leave. Say something. You're ready. But if you translate, you wait for the full sentence. And by the time you understand, the conversation has moved on. Thinking in English keeps you in sync. You respond naturally. You interrupt politely. You laugh at the right moment. These small things create the feeling of fluency. Listening is not about catching every word. It's about staying connected. And connection only happens when your thinking speed matches the conversation speed. That's why learners who think in English often say, "Suddenly, movies felt easier. Podcasts became enjoyable. I stopped needing subtitles." Not because English slowed down, but because their minds sped up. Thinking in English doesn't just improve speaking, it tunes your entire language system. Your listening becomes sharper. Your reactions become faster. Your confidence grows quietly. And you stop feeling like you're chasing the conversation, because you are finally moving with it. Part 6. Simple daily habits that train you to think in English naturally. Thinking in English is not a talent, it is a habit. And like any habit, it is built through small, consistent actions, not big, dramatic effort. Most learners fail because they try too hard. They sit down and say, "Now I will think in English." 5 minutes later, they are tired, frustrated, and silent. That's not how the brain learns. The brain learns through relevance and repetition. So instead of forcing English, you invite it into moments that already exist. Let's start with the simplest habit. 1. Narrate your life silently. You don't need full sentences. You don't need perfect grammar. You just describe what's happening in your head. "I'm getting up. Too early. I need coffee. This traffic is bad." Short, simple, real. This trains your brain to associate English with daily experience, not study time. 2. Think in phrases, not sentences. Fluency is built with chunks, not, "How do I form a correct sentence?" but, "How do people usually say this?" Phrases like, "I'm not sure. That makes sense. It depends. I didn't expect that." When you think in phrases, your brain stops constructing language. It starts retrieving it. 3. Delay translation, don't fight it. Translation will happen at first. That's normal. The mistake is trying to kill it. Instead, delay it. Let the English appear first, even if it's incomplete. Then, let the native language follow if needed. Over time, the delay grows longer, until translation fades naturally. 4. Use emotion as a trigger. Strong emotions lock language into memory. When something annoys you, react in English. When something excites you, label it in English. Seriously? No way. That's interesting. These emotional phrases stick faster than neutral study sentences. 5. Think out loud. Sometimes, when you're alone, speak your thoughts quietly. Not practicing, not rehearsing, just thinking, with sound. Your brain needs to hear your voice. Connected to English meaning. This reduces fear later when others are listening. 6. One environment, one language. Choose one daily activity. Walking, showering, cooking, commuting, and assign English to it. Every time you do that activity, your brain switches languages automatically. This creates a powerful mental anchor. The key idea here is simple. You don't find time to think in English. You attach English to life. And when English becomes part of life, it stops feeling like effort and starts feeling natural. Part 7. Why thinking in English makes you sound more natural, not more perfect. Many learners chase perfection. Perfect grammar, perfect pronunciation, perfect sentences. And the more they chase it, the further fluency feels. Here is a truth that may surprise you. Natural English is not perfect English. In real conversations, people repeat themselves. Change direction, mid-sentence. Use simple words. Leave sentences unfinished. Yet they sound fluent. Why? Thinking in English shifts your focus. You stop asking, is this sentence correct? You start asking, is this how people actually say it? That question changes your sound. When you translate, your sentences often sound stiff, formal, unnatural, because they follow the logic of your native language. Thinking in English follows the logic of English. Shorter ideas, clear stress, natural pauses. This is why learners who think in English often use fewer words, speak more slowly, sound more confident. Even though their grammar is not advanced, perfection creates tension. Tension changes your voice. Your tone rises. Your breathing tightens. Your pauses feel forced. Natural speech requires relaxation, and relaxation comes from acceptance. When you think in English, you accept imperfection, simplicity, uncertainty, and that acceptance shows in your voice. There is also something subtle happening. When you think in English, you begin to copy patterns, not rules. You imitate sentence length, emphasis, timing. These are things grammar books cannot teach. This is why some learners sound native-like, even without advanced vocabulary. They are not perfect. They are aligned. English does not reward complexity. It rewards clarity. Thinking in English naturally pushes you toward clearer ideas, simpler structure, stronger delivery, and those qualities create fluency. You don't need to sound smart. You need to sound real. And thinking in English brings you closer to how English is actually spoken, not how it is tested. Part 8. When thinking in English becomes automatic, the turning point of fluency. There is a moment every fluent speaker remembers. Not clearly, not exactly, but they remember the feeling. It's the moment when English stops feeling like a task. You don't plan, you don't translate, you don't prepare, you just respond. At first, it happens only for seconds. A short reply, a simple reaction, a quick thought. Then it disappears, and you don't even notice. But those seconds matter, because they are proof. Proof that your brain can think in English. And once something is possible, it becomes repeatable. This is the turning point of fluency, not when your English becomes advanced, but when it becomes automatic. Automatic doesn't mean perfect. It means less effort, less fear, less resistance. Your mind stops asking for permission. It just speaks. At this stage, learners often notice strange changes. They start dreaming in English, reacting emotionally in English, talking to themselves in English, not because they try to, because English is now part of their thinking system. And here is the most important shift. You stop measuring your English. You stop counting mistakes. You stop comparing yourself. You focus on connection. This is when fluency becomes stable. You can speak when tired. Speak when nervous. Speak without preparation. Because fluency is no longer something you do. It's something you have. But this stage doesn't come from pressure. It comes from patience, thinking in English every day in small moments, without judgment. Many learners quit just before this point. They think, I'm stuck. I'm not improving. I need something new. But what they actually need is continuation. Fluency does not arrive loudly. It arrives quietly. One day you simply realize, I didn't translate that. I didn't panic. I didn't stop. And that's when you know you've crossed the line. If there is one idea I hope you remember today, it's this. Fluency is not something you chase. It's something you allow. You don't become fluent by knowing more rules. You become fluent by removing resistance, by letting English exist in your thoughts, imperfect, unfinished, and real. Thinking in English is not about sounding smart. It's about sounding honest. It's about responding instead of preparing, connecting instead of translating, expressing instead of performing. Every time you think in English, even for a few seconds, you are training your mind to trust itself. You don't need to change your life to improve your English. You only need to change how your mind relates to the language. Let English live where your thoughts already are. If this video helped you see English differently, consider subscribing to the channel. Not for fast tricks, not for shortcuts, but for deeper understanding, clear thinking, and real fluency that lasts. Thank you for listening. And remember, the moment you stop translating is the moment English begins to feel like yours.